welcome back to this episode of The Mind of Reese. Today we have a very special badass artist, guest, all the things, goddess, Cori, and known as Gold Caviar on Instagram and on TikTok as well. So hi, Cori. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so excited to have
Hello.
you here. I already told you
Excited to
that
be here.
I have like a massive girl crush on you because we have a mutual friend, Angel. And so she tells me all about you and all of your guys' crazy stories. I think there was a forehead kiss in one of these stories.
Yeah, her sleepwalking situation apparently happened again to Delaney recently on like the trip. I just saw them like a week ago and they're like, you would never guess what happened. And I was like, and then they gave me this look. I was like, oh my God, I already know what this is going to be about. I already know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
But I'm a
kind of
survivor.
jealous.
It's okay. I always just like telling people I'm a survivor of Angel Rose. And she's like, you just stop telling people that. And I'm just like, it's just funny though,
But
because you're
it's
so
so
such a
good.
safe space, but it's just like so endearing.
It's so good. I remember she was telling me about this, and she was telling me as well, like you and I would get along very well. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, and you know, you were saying earlier that you trust what Angel has to say because she's never
yeah.
steered you wrong. And that's like, I totally agree with that. Angel is like the bridge to creating a lot of really cool relationships. And I think that's
Yeah.
like one of her superpowers. And so I'm just so glad to like have you here and to hear more about what you are doing because it's incredibly inspiring. You had posted recently, you're like in the last month, and it was just like such a juicy story about you being like, I left this shop and then I, you know, started working at a private studio. And then I decided to like show the plans of the like San Francisco, like your, like, I don't know what it was like the plans of the building or something. And
Yeah.
then it just like built this whole story up where I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited for you.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, so first let's before we dive into all the incredible things that are coming for you, I would love to know more about you and how you got into the industry and why you got into the industry and all that good
Mm.
stuff.
Well, I guess like it started with so I actually had originally went to some from the Bay Area in California, and then I moved from San Francisco to Toronto area, went to school out there. Well, it was like another town called Waterloo. Didn't work out, and I was like, I really want to do art. And my parents, when I was graduating high school, they're just like, oh, here's a compromise. You can be a graphic designer. And I'm just like, oh, okay. They're like, oh, you can be creative in that. And I feel like a lot of people fall into that, especially when you're from the Silicon Valley and you're like, oh, the tech industry, like that's the dream, but obviously it's not really right now anymore. So, but like, when I was there, I was just like completely miserable. I never lived in snow before, and it was just a really hard adjustment. I didn't know anybody there, but I knew that I had to do it because I love my family. My parents have been always supportive of me. Very grateful for them, and I'm like an only child, so I was just like, I need to get out and like be alone and not like depend on them anymore because they did so much for me. But I was just like, I need to do something for myself. And so I moved out there, realized that graphic design was not for me, went through like a really dark time, but then through that, I found myself, and my mom's sister helped me kind of set this all into motion. She helped convince my parents that, like, no, she has to do art. Like, you don't understand, like, this is who she is. And I'm really grateful for her, like, stepping in for me. And my family has we have like a background of just really strong women, which I know is kind of not the typical Asian persona in this industry, or like just in general, really. But coming from like a family of immigrants with really strong women having that type of background, I felt like it was always just natural for me to just always do my own thing and be independent. And so I really wanted to like hold on to that. So I still stayed out in Toronto um, when I started to pursue art. And then in the middle of going to art school, I was sitting down with my friend and we were watching like a couple of shows at Ink Master and going through our finals for art history. And I was just like doing like these constructive criticisms, like doing constructive critiques with my friends and stuff. And he was like, well, why don't you actually try to do tattooing? Have you ever thought of that? And I was just like, I have, but like I've never been surrounded by artists. It was always just me and just like trying to navigate that and just trying to fit in, I guess. But then I think that through the journey, I started learning that I shouldn't fight against my own impulses or who I am. And that was what was making me so unhappy. And so when I finally leaned into tattooing and I learned about how to get into it, and at the time, there wasn't really much information online about it. It was just like, oh, you just have to get tattooed. find a reception desk type of situation, and then maybe hopefully you'll become an apprentice. And I was just like, okay, so it sounds like and also have like a strong portfolio. My portfolio wasn't strong. It was maybe like 2 pages, looks very Pinteresty. Um, but I was really good at like talking. So I was really good at like selling myself to my mentor. And at the time, I didn't know that he was doing like in a whole apprentice farm. I didn't know that that was a red flag. I didn't know any of these things. And as an apprentice, you're just like so impressionable. So you just say yes, yes, yes to anything. And you kind of, and I know that like a lot of people end up falling into really toxic apprenticeships. And unfortunately, I kind of found myself into one. And you kind of also start having like Stockholm syndrome because you're like, oh, this is how things are supposed to be. And this is how I need to survive. And I didn't realize we had Stockholm syndrome. And then when I left, I was like really hurt by my shop because I left during COVID. I tried to like end things amicably. It was okay at first, and then it quickly wasn't. So I felt very alone after isolating myself in my one shop. And then when I moved, I didn't know if people wanted to get tattooed anymore because people were like, oh, don't touch me because of COVID. But I think that there's something about human connection where we just want to be seen and feel validated. And I think that a big part of our career and our jobs as tattoo artists is to provide that to our clients. So when I started like speaking out online just to vent and to heal and just to be heard, I just have this like, I guess this impulse control where I just keep talking. And I don't shut up. And sometimes things will catch online and people will like run with it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. I was like so relatable. And I didn't realize I occupied like a space that like I've never really seen that many people that looked like me that also were outspoken about certain issues, like especially like political issues with our community. So I kind of just like really leaned into that because I just felt like no one was saying anything about it yet. And I'm really glad that it picked up and people were listening to me because my followers were there for me. Somehow made my own little community through that. And I really leaned into them. And I really am very grateful for like the people that followed me through my journey and just like listened because I feel like I wasn't being listened to and was constantly invalidated during my apprenticeship. And eventually, through all of that and being like very authentic online, I generated a clientele base through it. And and I realized like in the beginning of my career, I would just like take anything, but I kind of started inviting people into my space that didn't share the same values as me. But once I started sharing online what I was about and my own opinions, I was like, oh, actually, what I say matters. I don't have to say yes to everything. So I started learning things about, or I'm still unlearning how to like be a people pleaser and stuff. But it's been a really great journey so far. And it's been really humbling and it's been able to help me connect with people like Angel and like with you. And it's just, and also like a lot of my friends that I do like conventions with. And it's been amazing. It's been so cool because there's been so many times my friends and I are traveling with each other and we meet these like artists that we've been following for such a long time. We go back to our Airbnbs and we're just like, who are we? Why are we hanging out with them? Why do they want to hang out with us? Like, this is crazy. We go through like imposter syndrome. We're just like, is this really our life right now? Is this really happening? Like, it's unreal. And we go through that every single time we travel with each other. It's insane.
Oh my God. You are so incredible. Like, you're just so incredible. I could just listen. I was just like, I'm just going to sit here and take it. There was a few things that you said that were so, it's like, oh, like it, thank you for just saying it out loud. Number one was, and we'll get back to this part of it, but the apprenticeship farming thing, that's a really interesting thing. And I'd love to dive a little bit deeper on that. But before we do, number two was how you decided to get brave and just start sharing online, regardless of whether or not anybody was listening. You were like, I'm doing this for me first, for my own healing. And I think that that's where a lot of people get stuck in the part where like utilizing social media as a marketing tool and as like a healing tool, because it's both. It's both a place for authentic expression and it's both to be inviting people into your space so that you can make some money. And so it's like there's this duality to it, but then when we go into it, we go into it to give, to get. And you went into it just to give, not only to people but just like to yourself. And then when people started listening, you were like, oh shit, like what I have to say does actually matter. And that kind of builds that like sense of confidence and that sense of like I want to be unapologetically expressed in this space. And if nobody likes it, then you can go fuck off. Or if you like it, come and stay. And like those people that stay, they become die hard. And that's where you get to
Mhm.
do like, oh, I actually get to choose what tattoos I want to do. And I actually get to choose who I want in my space and who gets to take up energy with me. Like that's really important. And it's very valuable. And it's worth being able to weed out the people that are not meant for you and not meant to be in your spaces. So I just want to like say like that's just like such a beautiful thing that you just expressed in and of that moment. And I do really love like the stuff you do say, especially the ones I notice more on TikTok that you're like very unapologetic. On Instagram, it's very like there's two
Yeah.
different ways to be like going onto the social media, and you do it so beautifully. Like you understand Instagram is for more of like the pretty platform, the like the storytelling, and where TikTok and you're like, I could just be a little bit more raw about it. I could just grab
Yeah.
my phone and start talking and post it, And
Yeah,
like,
it's like a lot less thinking when it comes to TikTok. I
yeah.
feel like I've taken a bit of a break from it just because I got so busy with work, and then I didn't I had like this weird like crossroads at one point. I was just like, do I have to continue posting? And I was like, no, I actually think that I'm okay with that for now because I think that there's like ebbs and flows with posting. And I think that for me, a huge learning process in this situation was knowing where to give myself, like where to put my energy. And I was in a place in my career right now, especially of like building up my work and like my style because there's I mean when I got into the apprentice farm or like my old shop, I knew I had like a lot of shortcomings, and I took the longest to graduate out of everybody. People would graduate within like 6 7 months, and I know that's like usually not really normal, but
Mhm.
then especially at that time. But it whenever my mentor would tell me like, oh, maybe you should stop doing line work because your lines are still shaky, just do realism, all I heard him say was, okay, just do better. Just keep practicing, keep pushing. That's all I heard. I was just
Mhm.
like, I'm not gonna listen to that part of it. But I would try to like translate it and also like just kind of gaslight myself a little bit, I guess. But like, I was just like, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. This is the style I want to try, at least for now. And I
Yeah,
think that also like sharing a lot of my opinions online, what I started realizing was it's okay to have different opinions. And I think that people got really, I think especially in our industry, people are like, oh, it's like black and white. Like it has to be this way or it has to be that way. And if you don't do it this way, then it's wrong. But I'm also like, well, that works for you, but it doesn't necessarily work for me. I think that there's a lot of things in our industry that should be standardized, but then we're all artists. We do things so differently from each other. So we kind of just have to accept each other for our differences and not punish each other for it, especially if we're not doing things that are hurting other people. Like once it starts harming people, yeah, for sure. Like we should hold that person accountable. But if it's their own process, why should we judge them for that?
I agree.
I think that as long as you're trying to be the best artist you can be for your clients and for yourself, then that's all we should really be focusing on.
I agree 100%. I think there's like the technicalities, like learn the technicalities, learn the rules, and then break the rules. Like
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. It's like learn all the rules and then break them. You
Mhm.
understand how deep it needs to go in the skin and all of the semantics and all the technicalities of the thing. But it's like at the end of the day, your artistry is going to speak volumes over you trying to be similar to everybody else. Like, and
Yeah.
especially in a growing industry, a rapidly growing industry that's growing so quickly, the more that we can really stick to our guns, like you said, you're like, where I put my energy is like, it just depends. It ebbs and flows. I'm human. I'm cyclical. I'm
Mhm.
seasonal. Like, we're allowed not to be robots here. And so when you're like, I'm just deciding that, like, I'm going to focus on my work and focus on my style, which your style's amazing. I love it. The
Thank you.
whole macabre line work. And I love that. I just love it so
Thank
much.
you.
It like feels like you. Like if I see it, I'm like, ooh, that's definitely like gold caviar. Like I just
Oh,
feel
that's so nice. Thank
that
you.
drip. Like I just feel that yummy drip.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Thank you.
like
That's always been like my goal. Like I knew that that's what I wanted to achieve when I
mhm,
came to it. I was just like, I just, I know that that's the goal. Then how am I going to get from point A to point B? I knew that once I got into it, I was just like, okay, I want someone to look at my stuff from across the street and be like, I know exactly who that is.
mhm,
And I also think, as like in terms of business wise, in an industry that's quickly getting oversaturated, you have to stand out. So
mhm,
if you want to make a certain, it's not, people always say like, oh, it's not about like the monetary value of it. It's very capitalistic to think this way, but then I think that it's unrealistic to kind of ignore those facts because
I
we
agree.
live in, like, you and I live in California. We know it's an expensive like state to live in, and if you can, I guess, like, if you can survive and you're okay with that, then yeah, you can charge whatever you want. But if you want to thrive, then I think that it's important to be true to who you are, follow those paths, follow your instincts, and eventually it will lead you down to a path where the style that you've always wanted to do will speak to other people and people will just naturally come to you.
Yes, and that's like that's so real and true because of the fact that there is this there's this wound. There's like this wound within us all about money and about talking about money and wanting money
Mhm.
for our art. And it's like actually, and that I think that's why I love your name, like your like alter ego, almost like your gold caviar. It's just because it's like it's like it's sweet perfection. It's expensive. It's luxury. Tattoos are a luxury. That's a luxury item. It is not a bill. It's not a necessity within life. So if I'm going to speak to the luxury buyer within the psychology of marketing, I'm going to do that by being authentic and creating a style that resonates with me and resonates with the people that I want in my spaces. And so we have to understand that there is the psychology behind the marketing, but the art does need to speak. So it comes from like
Mhm.
the cool part about being an artist is that we have this fully masculine side of like semantics and logic, but then we have this huge, beautiful side of the feminine where it's like this creativity and flow and moving with our wants and our pleasures. And so we bring that together. And when you can understand both, that's where you get thriving. That's where you really get like a fucking brand, not just a business. I'm in the business of tattooing, but Gold Caviar is a fucking brand. And that's a vibe. And that for me is like, oh, I want that vibe. Like I feel good in that. I want dripping in gold caviar. Like what the fuck, you know? Like there's that, you give off this brand vibe. Of course, there's so many parts to you. We can get to know you in so many different ways, but this like strong luxury aspect to the brand that you bring within your tattoos and within the experience, it's beautiful. And yet you read like reading and stalking you. It was like there's this sense of beautiful humbleness as well. It's like
Mm.
I fucking know I'm worth it, but I also know that like I remember where I come from. And that's like a beautiful balance that I see that you tend to hold. And I'm just like everything that you kind of represent is really just something I would love to inspire more artists just to step into, because at the end of the day, it is about the authenticity, but it is also about understanding like where you come from and being humble in that aspect.
No, I agree. I think that, like, when I came up with the name, it's like super anticlimactic story, honestly. It's just I got it from I was working at Levi's as a cashier and I was just making small talk with these tourists and they had like this logo. And then he was like, "Oh," I was like, "Oh, what's that logo from? What's really cool?" And he was like, "Oh, have you ever heard of the racehorse green caviar?" I was like, "No, but that sounds like a sick name." And I was like, "Well, I'm Asian, but yellow caviar doesn't really sound very nice. It doesn't have quite the ring to it." So I was like, "Gold." And that's literally how I came up with it. And I was just like, it does kind of speak to like the whole thing about luxury. And I remember speaking to my mom about it too, because she's very business minded and she's like a paralegal and stuff. So I was like kind of confirming her with it. And she was just like, no, that's a good name. It should be about luxury because you're right. Tattoos, it's a luxury experience. And a lot of my clients, they actually end up being a lot of them are first timers. And
Mm.
it's crazy because they're just like, yeah, let's just do a whole sleeve from a first time. I'm like, what? Okay, you're crazy. What do you want? They're like, anything you want. And I'm like, okay, like that's a lot of trust. And I think that we hold a space where and I know that like you are really good at connecting with your clients. Like I see your videos too and it really speaks to me because I'm just like, "Oh, you get it. You know the responsibility that we have to these
Mm.
clients and we cannot take advantage of that." And you also value like the human connection and it shows in your work. Like all that energy and all that love like it's poured into it. And I get like whenever I do like artist choice pieces, I usually will sit down with my clients for their consultation and I'm like, I really appreciate that you're along this journey with me and you are here wanting to support me growing my style, but I also want to know about you. So it's almost like a self-reflection moment where I start asking them like these really deep questions and I try to be inspired by whatever their journey is about through and then I try to translate it through like different narratives I've read or like folk tales and stuff and then or shows or something that like I connect with them. Like if there's some sort of show or anime or whatever that, or a game that we both get really excited about, then I start running with that, and I'm like trying to make it applicable to who they are and who in their life. But then there's also a disclaimer at the end of all these like conversations I have with them. I'm like, but if I'm feeling some type of way at the time and I'm in this like weird phase, then I might just like do something else. They're like, okay, and I'm like, tight, thank you.
See, that's the best part is that you're very open and honest with your clientele. You want them to be, it's a co-collaborative experience, but at the end of the day, they are choosing you for your style of art. So there is that intuitive, like that intuitive creativity that you pull through that they well, that they want, that they crave. They see they're there for a reason. They ask for artist choice because of that reason. They're like, I love your intuitive, like the way you intuitively create your pieces and the way you flow with the body and how much you care. Like even when you're drawing on pieces, you're like, I'm doing this because of the fact that I know that it'll flow better on your body rather than just sticking a stencil on you and just hoping that it works out, you know? And that's like that's what an artist does. And so when people they know this and that you get to know them and then you put little like meaningful things in there, it's still your art. And like that's the
Mhm.
thing that they get to take home with. They get to go home with. And so I the human connection part is like the biggest. I think it's feeling seen, like you said, feeling seen and feeling heard is the most beautiful gift you can give to anybody just because of the fact that that's all humans want. That's what human connection means. It's just, I just want to feel seen and heard and feel not even like, just feel validated in the fact that I feel some type of way without having other people judge me or ridicule me or gaslight me or whatever it might be for the way that I feel, for the things that I love and things like this. And so that's why I think the artist and client relationship is so important. And that's the reason why we have to share our values online and we have to like be open and be brave to be able to share ourselves in that way so that others can find themselves within us and come to us for, you know, for various reasons with the creative aspect.
No, I totally agree. And I think that like if you lose sight of that, it shows in your work. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot of artists that you see that end up like plateauing. And I always said like I would never want to be that person because I don't want to just be okay with what I'm doing. You know, I think I like being a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit unhappy with where I am with my work. You know, there's always something to improve on. I'm also just like insanely competitive. It gets a little violent between me and violent with our words between me and Angel because we'll just be going at it with each other, you know, and it's just like so funny. But I think that going to these like I remember when you guys sent me like a list of like some of the questions, a big part of it was about investment. So I started thinking about like what have I invested in? I'm like, well, I've invested a lot because all the money that I've ever had has always gone back into it. And I didn't see I'd never had disposable income probably until like 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, I was what, like 26? And I was just like, oh, that's a little embarrassing, but also not because I know where I am. I'm confident with what I'm doing. I just trust the process, you know? And part of my investment was going to these seminars, going to conventions and guest spots. And even though I would be putting myself in a space that made me really uncomfortable and I kind of get really manic in these situations, it was like so necessary for me to gain the confidence that I have now. And every time I put myself back into these situations, I feel a lot better. I feel like, okay, I am meant to be here. And if I'm not meant to be here, then eventually that means that if I'm not meant to be here or if I feel that way, then there's something missing and I have to learn what that is.
Mhm.
And going to these seminars, and especially learning from and listening to like Justin Hartman, he was the first seminar I ever went to. And I remember Angel was the one that convinced me to go to that one after my first guest spot there. And I had only known them for like maybe a week. And during that week, Angel was like, oh, like, we're gonna be best friends and I'm not letting you go. And I was like, don't say that to me because I have attachment issues and I will latch onto that shit so quick. You have no fucking clue. Like I will run with that shit. It's so bad. But like,
Like I'm
I'm
koala
like,
bearing that shit.
yeah, I'm like, you have no idea how lonely I am, and I need to hear that right now. You said best friends. Okay, let's go. It's so bad. But I'm like lucky that like I did lean into that. And she and I were in the car ride for like 5 hours and we just talked, you know, and on the way down, I was just like, I don't even know who Justin Hartman is. I just decided to purchase a ticket to the seminar to the shop that I don't know, but I've like met a couple of them before through my friend Megan because I connected with her online through this group chat that we had made like 3 years ago. And yeah, she introduced me to the couple of her coworkers. I was still like really nervous because it was a really big shop. And I remember getting shamed for it. And that was a weird thing about in this industry is the number of followers you have becomes like a weird currency and
Oh,
almost your value as an artist and how good you are, which I don't really like about it. And I always tell my clients that whenever they start, and I'm sure you get this too, where people will like fangirl or whatever, like when they meet you and they get tattooed by you, and you're like, whoa, I'm just a person, but like really grateful that like we connect in this way, but I'm a human being, you know? Like,
mhm,
and because I used to be like that, like whenever before I got tattooed by some of the artists that I really admired, I'd be like, oh my God, I'd be like super nervous. But after kind of occupying that kind of same space and experiencing like the gushing that you probably get as well, I'm just like, oh, we're all human beings. And so
mhm,
when I got shamed for not knowing who he was, I was just like, I kind of like turned around to this dude that was like giving me shit for it. And I was just like, can you not? Like, we're hiking and we're like, and you know what the hike, like, you're in a single file row, you know, and Angel was behind him. And so was like a couple of other people who shall not be named. That were like walking behind us. And I just like turned around and I stopped everybody. And I was just like, am I here to learn? Yes. Do I know who I is? No. No, but I'm just here to learn. Okay. And it was just like, just came out because it was just so much that he was like giving to me. And I was just like, I don't know why you got to give me this energy, man. And I was just like, I'm just going to put you in your place. I don't really care. And I'm sure that he was like shocked. And I like shocking white people, especially when they're just like, whoa, you're not a quiet Asian. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't know what you expected this to be. And then I met Justin, and he turns out to be like a really humble dude. I really like what he had to say. And I felt like when I was listening to him talk about his clients and how he handles it and also just his artistry, I was just like, this guy is pretty dope. And then the next year after that went to the Bobby Johnson one, and I was just like equally as dope. And then the
mhm,
year after that saw both of them again at the Explore conference, and then Chris Prim, and I was just like, damn, no wonder these three dudes just like work with each other, and because they just like all of their values aligned. And I was just like, I want that. I want to be surrounded and be working with my friends like that. Like if you look at their shop Instagram, there's no posts. I mean, they don't really need it.
mhm,
These guys post maybe like 2 3 times a year, but that's because they're so obsessed with their work. And that's something that they really emphasize in their seminars is obsession. And then people always ask, like, oh, how do you balance it? And then half the time they're just like, you don't. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You don't. And I'm just like, oh, I mean, that works for them. But I'm just like, I really want to find a balance though, you know, like if there are ebbs and flows in like social media, especially with art. And sometimes I feel it. And I'm sure you do too, where you're just like, oh, I feel this like energy that's like pulling me to my work. And I'm just going to heavily lean into it because that's what my body needs right now. But then sometimes you need to listen to your body and be like, oh, my body needs a break. I need to realign myself. I need to get grounded again and just like build myself back up so I can have the strength and put all that energy back into my clients and back into my work and just have like a bit of a refresher. And I think that that's where a lot of artists have trouble is finding balance and what balance means for you. And then sometimes it's like 20% break, 80% work. And sometimes it's 50-50. Sometimes you just don't want to do it at all. And I know some artists will take a break for years. And sometimes that's just what they need. And then they come back and they're just like, all right, let's go again. Like, let's see who's ready for me to tattoo them, you know, who's gonna show up for me now. And you're kind of at the mercy of like the algorithm now, but like at the same time, you just have to trust the process. And that's probably one of the few things that I had taken away from my apprenticeship was trusting the process.
I think that the balance, I think what it is it's not that we don't understand what balance is. I think it's more about the fact that we don't understand how to trust our own selves when
Mm,
our body is saying something because we're so used to society telling us that the hustle culture is the way to be. And don't get me wrong, like I'm in my holy hustle mode probably 80% of the time because I fucking obsess over what I do. Like I love
yeah.
what
I
I
know.
do.
I see you doing your morning runs and stuff, and I'm like, girl, you running and shit? Damn. You're that person I see on New Year's Day, and we're like, we get it. You're better than us. We get it.
It's so funny because like for me, I live off that kind of energy. Like I need it. Like I need it to like thrive as a human. So if I don't wake up at 4 in the morning and do all my fucking morning rituals, then you don't get me. Nobody gets
Yeah.
me. Nobody gets to see me. Get the fuck away from me. I'm Tales from the Crypt. And then once I do all that stuff, I swear I just drank the blood of virgins and I'm a vampire. And all of a sudden I'm like, yes, I feel revived. Like that's my vibe. And that's the thing. It's like, I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm fucking crazy. Don't
Yeah.
try to be like me.
Yeah.
Just take the energy and see where that takes you and trust in your own intuitive hits on what you need to do and where you need to go and trust that that's going to work for you. Now, the thing is that we make ourselves wrong so much of the time for how we're feeling. And that's for
Mhm.
me is what I've noticed is that when I started teaching business, I was like, oh, here are all these strategies that I use. Here's business structure. And every time I would literally hand people exactly what I've done, they couldn't do it. And I was wondering what that was. And the
Mm.
bridge between that is understanding how to find safety and knowing how you feel is right. And it's okay to feel it. And
Mm.
I found that it's not about all of the knowing how to do something. It's actually about finding that like safety and sovereignty within yourself to just trust that you actually know. You actually know how to do the shit. You know how to move, you know how to take action, you know how to get there, and like really believe that at the end of that journey, it's all going to be like you said, trust the process. Like it's going to
Mhm.
fall into place, whether it means it's falling into place in the way that you expect or that it doesn't. And most of the time it doesn't fall into place with the way you expect.
Yeah.
And so we just got to understand that like we can have expectancy, but we can't have expectation. Like we can
Yeah.
expect that things are going to be beautiful, but I can't have the expectation of the way it's going to show up.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think the hardest part for artists a lot of the time is just finding that they get to choose, like learn the rules and break them. Like you get to choose what's good for you. You don't have to follow what everybody else is doing. If following or calibrating to this person helps ignite you that energy, that fuck yes energy of like let's fucking go and let's fuck it and just see what happens, like then do that. But don't try to copy what everybody or
Mhm.
imitate what everybody else is doing in order because you see them having results and you're hoping you'll have the same. And I think that that's where we have to find that like really there's like that balance of like I can consume content for inspiration but not to judge or compare myself
Yeah.
or to try to like unless it's good, like unless for you it's like a healthy competition, you're like I like a little bit of unhappiness and that fucking works. So it's like unless you're doing it for that reason, but the moment it starts to make you feel less than, that's when
Mm.
it's like let me take a moment, let me stop, let me just realize like what's happening within my body and let me feel this out. And if I'm having a trigger, let me actually try and heal it instead of
Yeah.
pushing it down and like hiding away and working more or doing whatever. And so that's like, I think that's like that fine aspect that it's like all a fucking practice, just like
Mhm.
tattooing. It's a practice. We just gotta fucking practice doing it
Yeah.
and we just get better over time.
I know, I always like but I remember when I was at my last shop, I was approached by one of my coworkers and they were just like, "So how do you get your clients to like trust you so much? How did you get there?" And I'm just like, I just like thought about it, I was like, short form of that answer is I just ranted a lot online. Somehow it picked up. People, it resonated with some people, and they were like, "Yeah, I want to support this person." And I'm just like, "Me? Oh, okay, you know." But I think that as artists, especially if you're a, I think there's different types of artists. There's ones that are like super romantic and they just want to, and they're just idealists, they're dreamers, you know, and they're super creative in their own right. And they are almost like they're almost like alternative culture in a way where they're just like, no, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. And I just want to do it so differently than everybody else. But then there's no balance to that. That's too extreme. And then
Mhm,
there's the other part of the industry where you always see people doing it for the money, for the
mhm,
clout, because it's cool. And then you see that their work is like stagnant. So you have incredible artists that are really sticking to their guns, and then you have artists that are only in it for the money. And so you have to figure out where do you fall in between those two types. And I think that when you talk about like building a community, finding like art-minded artists, you know, you kind of find everybody that kind of falls within that spectrum. And a lot of times, I mean, you are that like I forgot who said it, but probably some asshole said like, yeah, you are the average of like whoever you surround yourself by, right? But
yeah.
it's true, you are. And some of my friends, they are extremely talented, but they're fucking crazy. But there's a reason why they're so good is because that's that insanity, you know? And then there are some people that are just like, this is good enough to me, but they're realistic
Mhm.
about their situation. And I think that a lot of people struggle with, where are they in this balance? How do they make that, do they make the money, still be happy? Because I knew that eventually I would get there, but how do I get there? And so you kind of have to sell your soul a little bit in the beginning, do a couple of Pinterest tattoos here and there, you know, whatever. But like, but I mean, we all do it. You just don't post it. You don't say anything about it. You don't claim it. And you just have to really think about what kind of artist you want to be, what
Mm.
speaks to you, and eventually people will just kind of gravitate to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, if, as long as you're brave enough to talk about it, I think that that's like
that's
the
true. Yeah.
aspect. It's like, I could want all of these things, but you were just like, I'm just gonna say what I want to say and see what happens with that. And it wasn't even like a tactic for you. You're just like, I'm just fucking doing this because I feel like I need to. And I just love the way you described that. And so it's just like, there is this beautiful spectrum between what type of artist you want to be, and a lot of people will make a judgment call on what type of artist you are, but you're the only one that gets to fucking, make that determination of who you desire to be. Like, I think it's just like, you just have to ask, like, who is it that I really want to be in this industry, or who is it that I
Mhm.
really want to be just in life, because like,
Mhm.
for me, this is my there's no real like separation between my life and business. Like, I just really know, like, I just live my life and I love my business and I just love weaving things in
Yeah,
and out of it, and I'm just really good at that. But I had to get good at it. Like, I had to
yeah,
practice that a lot. And being in this industry for 12 years, it's like the first 8 years of my career were fucking gnarly. They were exactly what you said. It was just like doing everything rock star. For me, it was like rock star lifestyle. It was getting myself in a lot of trouble. Um, my career blew up way too fast. I shouldn't have been on TV 2 years into my career. Like, it was just too much. And like, I got caught up in like the wave of the cloud and like, validation. And then when everything started to fall off, I was just like, oh my God, who am I? Like, who do I want to be in this? Like, and when shit really hit the fan, I was just like, who am I? And then
mhm,
it totally lost me. But it was the best situation of my entire life, back in 2016, when like I was caught very publicly for like taking tattoos and like posting them as my own early on in my career. And I was just like, oh my God, like, who am I? Like, who do I want to be in this? And for me to even come back in the industry was really hard because I was like, I totally canceled myself. Everybody canceled me. It was just like this whole thing. And then, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because at the same time, it was like, well, we get to start from zero. We get to down. The only way we can go is up, and we got to fucking get
mhm.
better and do what it is that's right for us and stay in as much integrity as possible. I think that was like the biggest thing for me, was the word integrity. That was like, I wish I could tattoo that on my forehead, because that was like all I lived by at that time. And then as I started to like regrow, refine myself in the industry, refine myself in what tattooing I wanted to do and like that kind of thing, that's where, you know, it like it like it like switches for everybody. You like realize like, wow, my integrity is actually the selling factor. It's like the actual
Mhm.
part that is the marketing, without the algorithm, without fucking like all the semantics and tactics of all the things on how to like grow your thing or whatever it is, your brand. It's like that integrity is the most like, it's the crucial aspect that that stands you apart from mediocre tattooers to, and I'm not just saying like work wise, like you could be a growing artist, as we all are, and still differentiate a uniqueness away from the
Mhm.
mediocre type, because there's a lot of people that do a lot of great work, but it's getting so many of them that it's like hard to remember who's who. And
Yeah,
so people start to actually take it as in the head and be like, I've got to stand out. The way I stand out is by being me, and is
mhm,
actually staying in integrity with who I am, and always like growth as a value. Like, like my value is
yeah,
growth. And so it's like, when we have that, when those values are there and we're sticking to that and we're showing up in that, that's what sets you apart. And just because your artwork might not be like the best as but like all these other great people, it's like, but the fact that your value is for growth, that's what's going to stand you apart to the other
yeah,
people. And so that's where like you say you're like, yeah, I'm still growing and stuff. And I'm like, your artwork's fucking beautiful. Like, of course you're still growing, but of course, like for me, it's like it stands out to me. And it stands out to just like it is that brand. Like it is that like, oh, I see it across the street. I could guess. Like, let me give it a good old college try guess that it's probably Cori's. You know what I mean? And with that being said, actually, let's talk about your new shop.
Oh my
So
God, yeah.
yeah. So you're
Weird.
like, what's happening? Where are you at in your stages? How's that been for you? Like, love to know.
It's funny because I feel like it's been just so chaotic, but in the beginning of but I've been just seeing so many angel numbers all the time. And I'm like, this is it. Yeah. Cause I tried last year. And then I pulled myself out of the process really fast because I was like, oh my God, can I do this? Like, I don't know. So I was like, okay, let's just go back and do more guest spots. And because I was just doing it alone, because all
Yeah.
my friends that I made online, they're like, we're all over the place, we're all spread out. And I didn't know any artists like locally because I was working in my own little private studio. And when it was time for me to open a shop, I was just like, can I do this alone? I don't know yet. And we were still on like the second wave of like the variants and whatever that was happening. And I was just like, oh, it seems like a little unstable right now. So maybe I won't, not just yet. So I decided to do more um guest spots. And then that's how I ended up in this shop or like the last shop I was in. And then quickly while I was there, I was just like questioning too many things
Mhm.
because the reason why I ended up not staying was because it just wasn't the right fit. And I was like questioning so many things. And I told her, my old boss, that if I ever had an issue with something or if I had a question about something, I was going to bring it up because at my last shop, I didn't question things enough. And we were almost like punished for it because it's
Mhm.
like, oh, how dare you challenge me, in my opinion? Like, I'm the professional, I'm your boss, like, I'm your mentor, you're supposed to listen to me. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's how things are supposed to be. And then later on, realized that's not how things should be. You should question things, especially if you're trying to learn, like, don't just accept things at face value. And when I told her that, she really encouraged me to continue questioning things and bringing things up. But I realized I kept doing it, or I wanted to keep doing it. But I was just like, that just is a sign that it was just time for me to go. Um, it just meant that if I have these like really strong opinions of what I would want in a shop, then maybe I should just do it myself. Like and then that's the beautiful thing about being in this industry is that you have full control over what you want to do and who you want to surround yourself with. So that's why I decided to try it again and looked at a bunch of different places in the Sunset District. And it was really exciting because I realized that there was like three other shops opening at the same time that I was in San Francisco. And so it's really cool seeing how the culture is here because in Toronto, where I apprenticed at, it the tattoo community there is so close. And when I say so close, you are in everybody's drama. Like everything about everyone's business. Oh my God, it is juicy. But I'm like out here, I'm like, I don't know anything about anyone out here. I don't know what's going on. Like I want to know the tea. Like, what's going on out here? But I think it was just because I didn't have the opportunity to like connect with people yet because things were closed down and things were shut down. So that's why I started doing guest spots. I'm doing a guest spot next Friday with the shop that I was supposed to have my first guest spot in ever. And so it's like a weird full circle moment because I still haven't met them. So I'm doing that. I'm doing this with you. And today I'm literally starting construction. So after I get off this call, I'm gonna head over down there to like see what's going on with that. So it's insane how things just kind of end up working out in the end. And it's a little bit chaotic, but I kind of thrive in that chaos.
Yeah.
And it's been really crazy and it's been really fun kind of going through the motions of designing the shop and then just trying to figure out like, oh, where am I going to put more of my money in? How do I want it to look? What kind of community do I want to build? And the whole point of, I mean, I've always said that I always knew I wanted to own my own shop, but then I had to ask myself like, what is going to be different about that? What am I about? And a big thing that I missed a lot was the community that I built and that I met in Toronto. And it stemmed more than just like tattoo artists. There were a lot of like fine artists in there too, like designers and painters, sculptors and everything. And I really wanted to connect with the local artists here. So eventually I would like to get to a point in my shop where since I have like a retail space in the front, I want to get connected with local artists and sell their products too, and just give them a space and an opportunity to do that. and then also have like gallery shows and stuff since I have like a couple of friends that are painters. And I don't know, just like build that community back up, because I think that even though San Francisco is kind of like in a scary spot right now, and I see it all over the news and stuff about people's cars getting broken in, people getting robbed and stuff, and it's really unfortunate. It's really sad to see, and it's never been that bad before, but I feel like the only thing I can do to control a situation like that is to bring people together. And I remember asking some of my friends, I was like, so what do you think we can do about this situation? And a lot of them were like, you can't, you just have to wait. And I'm like, no, that's not an answer to me. No, nah, I don't accept that. And it's like so funny to quote like Chris Jenner out of all people, but she's successful for a reason, right?
Love
Like
it. I love it.
I remember her saying something about how if someone tells you no, you're not asking the right person,
I love that.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that like because we have so much control over our own lives, we can also extend that and help other people, give them a
Yes.
platform, because maybe one day they're going to be in our positions and be able to do the same thing. And that's where it starts, is from us and us building a community like that. So if you want to see a change, you better step out there and start doing it yourself. It's going to take a long time, but like it's going to happen eventually, because if you want it that bad, it's going to happen because you're manifesting that.
Yeah. I mean, well, your whole mentality and what I'm noticing about you is that you're like, I'm in this business for life, bro. This is not just a fucking season. So it's going
Mm-hmm.
to take as long as it takes. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to continue moving toward that direction. And whatever intuitively guides me into a different one, I'm just going to follow that and see what happens. Like, you're like, I always knew I was going to be a shop owner. It didn't happen the first time. Cool. It's happening now. It's like, it's so beautifully nonchalant because you're like, this is all I've got. There is no plan fucking B. When we
Mm-hmm.
don't have a plan B and we only give ourselves one plan, then we're gonna follow through and stick to that plan. You know what I mean? You're gonna figure out how to feed yourself. You're gonna figure it out. So I just,
Yeah.
when do you plan on opening? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I want to do it as soon as possible though. Because I
I
mean,
feel
like,
that
I
vibe.
just want to be in my own space. You know, I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity to continue like working at my old shop. And even when I told them, I was just like, I knew she wouldn't do this, but you always hear stories about other artists getting kicked to the curb when they're just like, oh, I can stay until you find another artist as my replacement, or here's like my formal 2 weeks. And then I hear people being like, no, get out right now. And I'm just like, I do not want to be in that situation. That could have easily been me. But she was gracious enough to allow me to work there for another 3 months. And then I decided to move to another shop at another shop that I guest spotted at last year. And he knows my situation too. And he's like a owner of like a bunch of shops in Hong Kong, and then he brought one over to California. So it's really interesting to see how the culture of tattooing in Asia is in comparison to America, because I feel like, especially in Korea where it's illegal, I know that those guys are in it for the right reason. There's a reason why those guys are so good. It's
Yeah.
illegal and they're not doing it to like showboat or anything. And I
Mhm.
asked my friend '01 who did one of my pieces, and I've like idolized him for such a long time, but I was just like, how did you guys get so good? And he's like, it's literally because it's illegal. Like you have no choice.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do you do your taxes? He's like, I'm technically unemployed. And he's like wearing Balenciaga. He's like super trippy right now. But I was just like, I was like, all right, yeah, you unemployed. Okay, tight. Like, fuck yeah. And it's just like the culture over there and the mentality of it is just so different, because they're doing it because there's something in them that's like, I need to do art to survive, or else I'm going to go fucking crazy, because this is what's fulfilling to me. I might get disowned by my family. People in our society are not happy with what I'm doing and they don't pay anything for it, but I still want to do it. And that's why they're so good, you know? And they risk so much to be in this industry. And so I compare that landscape to the American landscape of tattooing, and it's so different. And
Mhm.
it's so exciting to see though that people are starting to notice these artists and they're getting so good, um and they have like so much influence over here, because and they don't even know that they're such a big deal out here. And I'm like, do you even know who you are, man? Like, do you know the kind of influence you have on people and the style that you occupy? Like, it's insane. And they're just like, yeah, but like I'm just gonna keep doing me. And I'm like, you do you, boo. You keep doing that. Yeah, I fuck with that.
Oh my God. So you're going to be bridging that gap between like the different cultures of, like from American to Asian. I really love, I did not even think about how it is illegal in Korea. And so it's like, they're doing it because that's all they like, they love it. Like you
Yeah,
can they've got nothing else. And so,
yeah.
whoa, what a fucking, that's so inspiring for me. And holy
It's
shit,
literally like if they can do it and they can do it like that, then there's no excuses for us,
there's
because like
no fucking,
they don't get those clients that you and I get that are like you have like these really fulfilling moments. And I'm sure that I still remember the first couple of times where I had a client that was like, "Oh, I trust you completely." And we know that like sometimes when clients say they don't actually mean it, but when a client actually did mean it for the first time, I was like, "Whoa, this is insane!" Like
yeah,
that's a great and that's a great interaction. You have great conversations with them, and then they come back and you're like, "Oh, hey," and you like just catch up with them, and they become more than just a client. I feel awkward even sometimes calling them clients, but you still have to have like that healthy boundary with them. But with my friends over there, they're just like, "Yeah, sometimes." A a client over there can be like, "Oh, I'm actually not going to pay you after you tattooed me for 11 hours because I'll just snitch. Like, you can't do anything about it because it's illegal. Like, what are you going to do?" Or they'll pay like dirt cheap over there, like maybe $300 to $500 for like a full day session. Like, it's crazy.
mm,
And that's why they have to like continue traveling and they risk so much. And even when they go over like customs and stuff, they get their stuff taken away or they get like banned for. I know an artist that's gotten banned from coming back to America to work because they showed their face online and they like put it through a scanner and stuff and like at the airport and they're like, yeah, you can't come here anymore, like you're not allowed. So they're like stuck in Asia now for 10 years because they got caught, but they would do it again, you
yeah,
know.
they would. Motherfuckers. Oh, we're gonna have to have another podcast episode on this, on this, because that is just too good. Oh my God. Cori, thank you so fucking much for being here and sharing your fucking imminent wisdom. You are so incredible. And I, from Asian to Asian,
Yeah.
we both have immigrant moms or immigrant
Mm,
parents. Like my mom is immigrant, but I feel like it's the immigrant parents, especially the moms, like the women that are so like that are so strong. Like,
yeah,
and I know like what you mean by the culture of like, and especially I'm sure, are you so are you Korean or are you
I'm Vietnamese and Chinese.
Vietnamese and Chinese? So like especially like like in that in like your culture, it's like that is that like the docile, like that quiet, the like kind of
Mm.
like meek style.
And you're
But
like Filipino, right?
I'm Filipina. And
Okay,
so
so you're loud.
I'm the loud. I'm the jungle Asian. Whereas
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? There's like the bougie
I'm
Asian
only
and
like half jungle Asian, so I get it though.
exactly you have to, you got the feistiness in you.
Yeah,
So
oh yeah.
that's where like I feel like it's really interesting because like I wouldn't be where I'm at without like how my mom was. Like she was like cutthroat, crazy, smart, and just like trying to get her green card to live here, you
Yeah.
know? And so like I just love her for that. But I love this whole like I love you bridging the gap between that culture and just saying the things you said. I think it's going to be so impactful for so many people. And I just love everything about you. And I can't wait to
Oh,
meet you in
thank you.
person.
Oh my God, yeah, we have to one day. I don't even, I mean, your schedule's crazy. My schedule's about to get
Oh,
crazier. It's going to be like an insane year, but I know we're going to meet eventually. And it's
I
going to
know.
be such a magical moment. And we're probably going to be sitting down talking about like the whole, like the interminglings of Asian artists coming over to America and like seeing how those two cultures
Oh,
kind of meld with each other because it's such an interesting conversation, especially seeing, especially like at my old shop where they had so many international artists like constantly.
yeah.
And it was funny because, especially when I started getting tattooed by a lot of the Korean artists, we don't speak the same language, but there's something that is connecting us still. And the artists that I really looked up to, I was just like, we would converse in very broken English and I talk really fast. So sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I should just like learn Korean. You know, like I have to know what their secrets are. Like I need to know because if they can't translate it, then I have to do my job if I want to know that information. And I think that that's a big part of the culture of this industry is grafting. And so if you want to know something, then you better put in the work so that you can. And there's something that they know that we don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're gonna learn that, right? That's where you're gonna
Yeah.
that's why you're bringing in that community in your shop. You're like, I'm going to invite, and really it's about community, but really I'm gonna know all your secrets while you're here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's my right? You're in my space, so you got to know.
I I so thank you so much for everything. And you guys, we'll put all the show notes for how to get in contact with Cori and how to get like even tattooed or follow and all the good stuff. She's amazing. And I just love you. And thank you so much for being
Oh,
here.
I love you too. Thank you so much for this. It was so nice to like finally talk to you, and every time I see your videos, I'm just like, I fucking identify. I feel fucking seen because that's like another Asian sister right there. Like I feel it, I get it. I like
Yeah.
you and I occupy the same spaces, and it's so interesting to see like the type of styles that you do and like the people that you connect with, and it just like speaks volumes. So thank you so much for being one of the first people to do that.